Hello, my ninjas. This guide will show you how to use the Blister-Beetle and the Medusa powders. The Blister-Beetle reads, when thrown, it explodes on impact and releases a cloud of poisonous dust. Those who breathe in the powder will become poisoned. And the Medusa powder says the same thing except for paralysis. Both of these serve an equal purpose, so I will be coupling them in a single video. The jutsu cost for both is 1.4, and the total amount preparable, regardless of jutsu cost, is 5. The powder jutsus are on the faster end of the medium speed casting animations and are thrown in an arc trajectory. These can and will be thrown over smaller enemies if the player is too close. Like all jutsu thrown in the arc trajectory, the powders have limited range when not locked onto an opponent. This range is drastically increased when locked onto an opponent. While these can be cast when the player is out of key, due to how limited that they can be readied, the jutsu costs, the non-direct path of travel like the shuriken and kunai, and how slow the casting animation is, this is not a recommended way to use these jutsu. These are an area of effect jutsu that linger and build accumulation for the respective status ailments of poison or paralysis. These are best used either as a fight starter or at the end of an enemy's attack string. These can also be used very well when the enemy is in a key broken state. The key is when the enemy is stuck in a co-located location with the area of effect of the jutsu. These jutsu are the multi-target variants of the shuriken counterparts. These are less powerful on direct hit than the shuriken counterparts and the ground fire counterparts. However, these can be extremely useful because of the lingering effect, which can build accumulation over time and still be effective without needing high accumulation investment or ninjutsu power. These are not recommended against enemies with specific resistances to these jutsu effects or these status ailment effects, especially ones that move around a lot and are hard to lock down into a specific location. These are best paired with the guardian spirits Shirohami for poison and Itukiri for paralysis. While not so much for poison, as the goal for poison is for it to never to run out and the player to not have to re-inflict on enemies. However, soul cores that grant animal bonus when the enemy is paralyzed also pair extremely well. These also pair very well with the Blister Beater's poison, with the Arcana of serpents, and the Arcana of vermin with the Medusa powder's paralysis to either maintain the poison ailment or re-inflict the paralysis ailment. One might think that this might be an effective means of laying a trap. However, any damage that an enemy takes even while the player is in smokescreen will still aggro enemies. Poison is an extremely straightforward jutsu in effect. Basically, inflict on your opponent and maintain. Typically, these can be used to continue to damage enemies while maintaining distance. However, the paralysis effect is one of my personal favorites, and I have an entire video explaining and showing how these can be effectively maximized. However, to give a short overview of how to do so, against human enemies, if you get them out of key and then hit them with the Medusa powder, this can be used to effectively start a combo where they are paralyzed. You can grapple them, followed up by a finishing blow, grapple them again, and so on and so forth until the effects last. Against yokai, this can be an effective means of creating the paralysis loop when they're in the winded state. The player can constantly make them accomplish the winded state animation where they fall to their knees gasping for air. And if they are paralyzed when in that time frame, especially when combined with the arcana, a paralysis or vermin, this can be used to keep yokai in an effective loop with the powder smoke creating an area effect that constantly builds that accumulation over and over. I typically like to use the instance of when they are paralyzed to hit them with the jutsu, as that usually makes them fall to their knees and start the animation again. However, as long as you're combining these two, it should relatively be fine and you can keep them in this constant loop. When paired with the empowered ninjutsu effect, this can be an effective means of regaining the Medusa powder pellets, as hitting the enemy with your melee weapon with the Arcana effect to continue the paralysis will build up the charge to recover the ninjutsu.